Your brain has been fighting itself your whole life, and nobody ever gave you the 10 tools to stop it. Not motivation, not willpower, not another book about mindset, but 10 specific, testable moves that change how your mind reacts in real moments. Every one of these 10 fits inside a single sentence, works in under a minute, and costs absolutely nothing to try today. These are not internet myths about reading crossed arms or catching a liar by which way their eyes move, because those tricks are far less reliable than people assume. What actually works comes from behavioral science and social psychology, and it shows up again and again in real conversations, real bad habits, and real moments of stress. By the end of this video, you will know 10 of these moves, what they actually do inside your head, and exactly how to use each one today. You will know how to shrink a panic spike in seconds, how to make a stubborn habit almost automatic, how to get someone to tell you the truth without a single accusation, and how to stop assuming the worst about people who never actually meant it. None of this is magic, and none of it is mind control. It is just getting your brain to stop working against you. Most of what gets called a psychology hack online is exaggerated far past what the actual research supports, and it rarely survives being tried in a real messy situation. These 10 are different. They are built on mechanisms that keep showing up across behavioral science and social psychology, not a single flashy claim from one video that never gets tested again. Every single one of these 10 is something you can test today, this afternoon, in your next conversation, without buying anything or reading a single textbook. Some of them work on your own mind, calming a spiral or reframing a feeling, and some of them work on how you read and talk to other people. The order matters too, because we are going to move from the tools that calm you down, to the tools that build better habits, to the tools that improve every conversation you have. So let's start with the first one, because it is the fastest one to use, and you can try it the very next time you feel overwhelmed. When you feel completely overwhelmed, the first useful move is to name the feeling in plain, simple language. Not a vague sense of dread, but an actual sentence, something like "I am anxious," or "I am embarrassed," or "My body feels threatened right now." This is called affect labeling, and research on it suggests that putting a feeling into words can actually dampen how intense that feeling is. Here's why this matters so much in daily life. Vague distress just keeps spreading because your mind has nothing to hold on to. But the moment you name it, your brain finally has something concrete to organize around instead of an endless, shapeless panic. Use this right before a hard conversation, right before you walk into a presentation, or in the middle of a spiral of overthinking at 2 in the morning. The wording has to stay plain and concrete, not dramatic, because dramatic language just feeds the spiral instead of shrinking it. Say it in your head or even out loud. "I am anxious about this meeting," and notice how much smaller that feels than the shapeless dread was seconds earlier. Think about the difference between a vague nod of dread before a job interview and the specific sentence, "I am nervous because I want this job." The vague version keeps circling in your chest with no exit, while the specific sentence gives your mind an actual object to deal with. This works the same way before a hard phone call, before walking into a room full of strangers, or right before you hit send on an important email. You can even use it on smaller, everyday irritations, saying "I am frustrated that the bus is late," instead of just stewing in silent tension. The labeling does not need an audience. It works just as well silently in your own head as it does said out loud to another person. Try pairing it with a single slow breath. Name the feeling, take that one breath, and then decide your next move from a calmer starting point. Parents use a version of this with young children constantly, teaching a child to say "I am angry" instead of just screaming, and the exact same mechanism still works decades later in adults. That is trick number 1, and it costs you nothing and takes about 3 seconds to use, so try it the next time your chest tightens for no clear reason. Now here is a trick that fixes something almost everyone gets wrong about motivation, and it has nothing to do with trying harder. A goal like "I should work out more" sounds reasonable, but it is actually a weak goal, because it depends entirely on motivation showing up on command. An implementation intention is a much stronger structure, and it looks like this. If it is 7 in the morning, I put on my shoes and walk for 10 minutes. Or, if I crave junk food at night, I make tea first and wait 10 minutes before deciding. Decades of behavior change research support this basic point. Specifying exactly when, where, and what you will do increases follow-through by a large margin. Here is the hidden mechanism behind why this works so well. It reduces the decision cost in the actual moment you need to act. Your brain is no longer negotiating with you at 7 in the morning about whether today is the day. It is simply executing a script you already wrote. Write your own, if then plan right now for the one habit you keep failing at. and make the trigger something that already happens every single day. Notice what actually changed in that sentence. It did not mention motivation once, it only mentioned a trigger and an action. This same structure works for almost anything you have been putting off. If my laptop opens, I write one paragraph before checking any messages. Or, if I sit down for lunch, I put my phone in my bag first so the meal is not competing with a screen. The specificity is the entire engine here. A vague plan like I will try to be better with money gives your brain nothing to grab onto. But a plan like, if a bill arrives, I move 10% of my next paycheck into savings before I spend anything else is impossible to misread. People who write these, if then plans down on paper or in their phone notes, tend to follow through more often than people who just think the plan. That is trick number 2. Turning a wish into an automatic script your brain runs without a debate. The third trick fights something almost nobody admits to themselves, which is that you consistently overestimate your own willpower. People routinely believe motivation and discipline will carry them through, while quietly underestimating how much tiny physical friction changes behavior. The fix is not a pep talk, it is making the good habit physically easier to reach than the bad habit. If you want to read more, put the book on your actual pillow so you physically cannot lie down without seeing it. If you want to stop doom scrolling, log out of the app, move it off your home screen, or leave your phone in another room for part of the evening. If you want to eat better, place the healthier food exactly where your hand naturally lands first when you open the fridge or the cupboard. This lesson is older than modern productivity culture, and it is simple. Your environment beats your intentions almost every single time. Look around your own space right now and find the one piece of friction that is sabotaging you, then physically move it. Think about someone trying to quit sugary drinks who simply stops buying them and fills the fridge with sparkling water instead. They are not relying on willpower every single time they open the fridge. They are relying on the fact that the easy option is now the healthy one. The same logic works in reverse for a bad habit you are trying to remove. Add one extra step between you and the temptation. Keep the video game controller unplugged and in a drawer if you are trying to protect your evenings, so turning it on takes real effort instead of one click. Keep your running shoes by the front door instead of in the closet, so leaving the house for a walk takes zero extra searching. None of this requires you to feel motivated at all because the environment is doing the persuading before your motivation is ever needed. That is trick number 3, and it works because it removes the fight before it even starts. Here is a problem that stops people before they even begin, and it has almost nothing to do with the size of the task itself. The real failure point is not the full job, it is the emotional resistance to starting the job at all. The fix is called the 2-minute start, and it means defining the first action so small that it feels almost impossible to refuse. Open the document, wash one single plate, read one page, do one push-up, or sort just one email. This works because starting itself changes your identity and your momentum, not because 2 minutes actually finishes the task. Once a task is already in motion, your brain frequently experiences far less dread than it did during all the anticipation beforehand. The 2 minutes is not solving the whole job, it is only solving the start, and the start is the part that was actually stopping you. Pick the task you have been avoiding the longest, and give yourself permission to do only the smallest possible piece of it. Think about the last time you avoided doing laundry for days. The actual folding takes maybe 15 minutes once you're doing it. The dread was never really about the 15 minutes, it was about the mental wall standing between you and starting the first sock. The same pattern shows up with big emails you have been avoiding. The reply itself might take 90 seconds once your fingers actually start typing. Tell yourself you only have to write the first sentence, not the whole email, and notice how much smaller that goal feels immediately. This trick works especially well for tasks tangled up in dread or shame, because those are exactly the tasks where the anticipation is worse than the reality. Once you have opened the document or washed the one plate, you are no longer deciding whether to start, you are simply continuing something already in motion. That is trick number 4, and it quietly dissolves procrastination by shrinking the entry point down to almost nothing. Trick number 5 is about conversations, and it explains why some people just feel easier to talk to than others. Subtle matching of tone, tempo, posture, and energy level can genuinely increase rapport between two people. But here is the catch. Exaggerated imitation of someone's gestures or words usually backfires and feels obviously fake. People respond well when the social rhythm between them feels smooth and familiar rather than mismatched or effortful. In practice, this means meeting an anxious person with calm clarity instead of high-intensity dominance, because that mismatch only raises their stress further. Or matching a fast-talking speaker with slightly quicker pacing of your own, so the exchange feels natural instead of dragging. This is not manipulation, it is simply reducing the tiny friction that makes a conversation feel like hard work instead of flowing naturally. Notice the energy of the next person you talk to, and adjust your own pace just slightly to meet them there. Think about a friend who talks with their hands a lot and speaks quickly, and compare that to sitting across from someone speaking in slow, quiet, measured tones. If you respond to the fast-talking friend with the same flat, slow tone you would use for the quiet person, the exchange starts to feel oddly stiff. Matching does not mean copying every gesture, it means letting your own energy rise or fall slightly so the rhythm between you two feels connected. With someone who is visibly anxious, this actually means doing the opposite of matching their nervous energy, and instead offering a steady, grounded tone they can settle into. The goal in that specific case is not rhythm matching. It is being the calm anchor the other person's nervous system is quietly searching for. Watch for these two very different situations in your own conversations this week, one where you match energy, and one where you deliberately offer calm instead. That is trick number 5, mirror lightly, never obviously, and the conversation gets easier almost immediately. Now here is one that skilled negotiators, interviewers, and therapists use constantly, and most people never learn it. Many people talk too quickly after asking a question because silence feels socially dangerous, like something has gone wrong. In reality, a well-timed pause after a question often makes the other person elaborate far more than they originally intended. Ask a clean, direct question, and then simply stop talking, resisting the urge to fill the space yourself. The silence creates just enough pressure that the other person often adds the detail they would otherwise have skipped entirely. This is especially useful when someone gives you a shallow answer, a defensive answer, or an answer that sounds obviously rehearsed. The key is staying relaxed while you wait, not glaring at them like you are running an interrogation. Try this in your very next real conversation. Ask one clean question and then count silently to 5 before you speak again. Picture asking a coworker, "Is everything okay with the project timeline?" And they say yes quickly with their eyes down. Instead of moving on to the next topic, you simply hold the silence for a few extra seconds and let it sit there in the air. More often than not, that same coworker will fill the gap themselves, adding, "Actually, there is one part I am worried about." Negotiators use this exact same pause after naming a number, because the other side often feels compelled to justify or adjust their position first. Skilled interviewers rely on the same tactic after a candidate finishes a rehearsed-sounding answer, letting the extra beat of silence pull out the more honest, unscripted follow-up. Therapists use it after a client gives a surface-level answer, because the extra silence frequently pulls the real, more honest answer up to the surface. The mistake most people make is treating silence as failure, when a pause is actually one of the most productive things you can do in a conversation. That is trick number 6, strategic silence. And it is one of the cheapest ways to get someone to tell you the truth. Trick number 7 is about sequencing, and it explains why some requests land easily while others get rejected instantly. The foot in the door effect is not universal, but the broader pattern behind it is genuinely useful in daily life. People prefer consistency with their own recent behavior and their own self-image, so a small agreement can pave the way for a bigger one. If someone has already agreed to a small, reasonable action, a larger related action often becomes much easier for them to accept afterward. In daily life, this is less about manipulation and much more about smart sequencing of what you ask for and when. Instead of asking a coworker to help with an entire project, first ask whether they can simply glance at one single page. Instead of demanding you become a completely different person overnight, ask yourself to become the kind of person who shows up for just 5 minutes. Picture wanting your teenage sibling to help clean an entire garage, which feels overwhelming and easy to refuse the moment you ask directly. Ask them instead to just help you move 3 boxes. And once they are already in motion and already helping, the bigger job feels far less unreasonable to keep going. This same sequencing trick works on yourself when a huge goal feels paralyzing, like wanting to write an entire book from a blank page. Ask yourself only for 1 paragraph today, and because you already said yes to that one small paragraph, tomorrow's paragraph feels like continuing, not starting over. Salespeople have used a rougher version of this for decades, but the honest, non-manipulative version is just good sequencing, matching the size of the ask to what someone can comfortably say yes to right now. The consistency principle is doing the heavy lifting here. People do not like feeling like they contradict their own recent choices or their own self-image. Use this the next time you need real cooperation from someone. Start with the smallest reasonable version of the request, not the full ask. That is trick number 7. Ask for the small yes first, and the bigger yes becomes far less intimidating for both sides. Here is a trick about your own body that most people completely misread in the moment it matters most. Physiologically, anxiety and excitement overlap far more than people realize. Both involve an elevated heart rate, heightened arousal, and anticipation. Both are simply your body mobilizing itself for action. The difference is almost entirely in how you interpret the sensation. One useful trick right before a performance is not to demand calm from yourself, but to reinterpret the feeling entirely. Tell yourself, "My body is getting ready," instead of fighting the sensation and trying to force an artificial sense of serenity. This reinterpretation can work better than forcing calm, especially right before public speaking, a competition, or a difficult confrontation you are dreading. The point here is not self-deception, it is deliberately choosing an interpretation that keeps your arousal functional instead of paralyzing. Next time your heart starts racing before something important, say the sentence out loud, "My body is getting ready," and notice the shift. Athletes are taught a version of this before competition, because a racing heart before a race is nearly identical to a racing heart before a threat. The difference between choking under pressure and performing well often comes down to which story the athlete tells themselves about that same racing heart. The same physical sensation, sweaty palms, quick breathing, a jittery stomach, shows up whether you are about to walk on stage or about to ride a roller coaster. On the roller coaster, people call it excitement, and on the stage, people call it fear, even though the body is doing almost the exact same thing. Choosing the readiness interpretation does not remove the sensation. It simply stops you from treating your own body as evidence that something is going wrong. This one small mental substitution, from "I am scared" to "my body is getting ready," has helped performers walk on stage instead of walking away. That is trick number 8. Reframe the anxiety as readiness, because your body was already on your side the whole time. Trick number 9 deals with the cruelest voice you will ever hear, and it happens to live inside your own head. Asking yourself, "What would I tell a friend in this exact situation?" can genuinely interrupt a spiral of rumination before it gets worse. Even using your own name in your inner speech instead of the word "I" can create just enough distance to think clearly. This matters because people consistently give wiser advice from one step back than they do from inside their own emotional blast radius. Self-distancing does not mean denial, and it does not mean pretending the problem does not exist. It means reducing the ego threat just long enough for your mind to actually process the situation instead of just reacting to it. This trick lands so well in real life because it feels immediately usable, and it never sounds clinical or distant. Next time your inner voice turns cruel, ask what you would tell your closest friend, and then actually take that advice yourself. Picture replaying an embarrassing mistake at work over and over, telling yourself in first person, "I am so stupid. I ruined everything." Now picture saying instead, using your own actual name, "Okay, here's what happened, and here's what you would tell a friend in this exact spot." That tiny shift from "I" to your own name creates just enough psychological distance to interrupt the spiral before it drags you further down. People consistently give calmer, more useful advice to a friend describing the exact same mistake than they ever give to themselves in the moment. Self-distancing borrows that same calmer voice and points it back at your own situation instead of leaving it locked away for other people only. This costs nothing, takes seconds, and works especially well late at night when rumination tends to feel loudest and hardest to escape. That is trick number 9, self-distancing, and it turns your own mind from an enemy back into an advisor. The final trick fixes one of the most expensive mental habits a person can have, and almost everyone does it constantly. That habit is assuming you already know exactly why someone did something without any real evidence behind that assumption. A much stronger move is to observe someone's repeated behavior across many different situations before you ever reach for a motive. A person interrupting you once may simply be stressed that day, but interrupting everyone across many different settings suggests an actual trait or habit. A delayed reply to your message might mean someone is overloaded with work, not that they are disrespecting you on purpose. This trick improves your relationships because it reduces the unnecessary story making that turns small moments into imagined conflicts. It also improves your judgment overall because context genuinely explains more human behavior than most people are willing to admit. Next time someone's behavior stings you, pause and ask, "Is this a pattern across many situations or just one moment?" This same pattern reading habit works just as well when you turn it on yourself instead of only on other people. Before you decide you are simply a lazy person because you skipped the gym once, ask whether this is actually a pattern across many weeks or a single tired evening. Being fair to yourself with pattern reading matters exactly as much as being fair to the people around you. Picture a friend who does not text back for 2 full days, and your mind immediately jumps to, they must be angry with me. Now picture checking that story against the pattern. Does this same friend usually take days to reply to everyone, or is this unusual only for you? If they are famously slow with every single person in their life, the delay was never actually about you at all. If instead they always reply within the hour to everyone except you lately, that pattern is now telling you something worth actually asking about directly. The trick is not to ignore your gut feeling entirely, it is to demand a pattern across multiple situations before you trust that feeling as fact. This single habit prevents an enormous number of arguments that start from an assumed motive rather than an actual confirmed one. That is trick number 10. Replace mind reading with pattern reading, and half your daily frustrations quietly disappear. Now, here is how these 10 tricks connect to the actual pain points you deal with every single day. Affect labeling helps the instant panic starts rising in your chest before something stressful, whether that is a job interview, a medical appointment, or a difficult phone call. If then planning helps the moment your good intentions keep collapsing before they ever turn into action, especially with exercise, money, or any habit you have restarted a dozen times already. Friction design helps with the habits you keep failing at no matter how much you promise yourself this time is different, because it removes the need for constant willpower entirely. Mirroring lightly helps in every single conversation you have, from a first date to a tense meeting with your manager, by closing the small gap that makes talking feel like work. Strategic silence helps you in interviews, arguments, and any moment someone is giving you a shallow or rehearsed answer instead of the truth you are actually looking for. Asking for the small yes first helps whenever you need real cooperation, whether from a coworker, a family member, or even a stubborn version of yourself. Reframing arousal as readiness helps right before any performance, from public speaking to a hard conversation you have been avoiding for weeks. Self-distancing helps during shame spirals, when your own inner voice becomes the harshest critic in the room and will not stop replaying your mistakes. And pattern reading helps whenever you feel personally attacked by someone's ambiguous, unclear behavior, turning a spiral of assumptions into a simple, checkable question. A few honest cautions before you go use all of this, because none of it is a magic switch. Mirroring can feel creepy the instant it becomes too obvious, so keep it subtle, never a performance. The foot in the door approach only works when the requests are genuinely related, not when it feels manipulative or forced. Strategic silence can encourage someone to open up, but it can also raise discomfort if the setting already feels hostile to begin with. Affect labeling helps a huge number of people, but severe anxiety may need more support than a single labeling trick can offer. None of these 10 tricks should ever be sold to yourself as a replacement for real therapy when you actually need it. Think of these tricks the same way you would think of a good multi-tool, useful for 100 small daily problems, but not the right instrument for a major structural repair. If you find yourself using self-distancing or affect labeling every single hour just to get through a normal day, that frequency itself is worth mentioning to an actual professional. The tricks are meant to smooth out the ordinary friction of being human, not to patch over a much larger problem sitting underneath. Used honestly, at the right moments, for the right size problems, all 10 of these hold up extremely well under real daily pressure. And the reason these 10 specifically were chosen for this list is that every one of them relies on a mechanism that shows up again and again across real research, not a one-time viral claim. Emotion labeling, habit friction, implementation intentions, self-distancing, reciprocity, silence, and strategic framing are not trends. They are patterns that keep reappearing because they consistently work. Here is the truth that most flashy psychology content on the internet will never tell you. Useful psychology almost always looks boring from the outside. It is not hypnotizing strangers or detecting lies from crossed arms across a room. It is quietly changing the choice architecture around your own behavior, one small adjustment at a time, like moving a book onto your pillow instead of promising yourself you will read more. It is controlling emotional escalation before it spirals, and making ordinary social interactions easier to navigate without overthinking every single word you say. That sounds far less dramatic than the myths people share online, but it is dramatically more likely to actually survive contact with your real, messy, everyday life. You do not need 10 new personality traits to benefit from any of this. You only need to remember one tool at the exact moment it is useful. You now have 10 specific tools, from naming a feeling to reading patterns instead of assuming motives. But there is one mistake almost everyone makes when they try to use even one of these tricks for the first time, and it quietly cancels out the entire benefit. That mistake is exactly what the next video breaks down, piece by piece, so you do not waste these 10 tools the way most people do. Most people hear a trick like strategic silence or effect labeling, try it once in a slightly awkward way, decide it did not work, and quietly abandon it forever. The mistake was never the trick itself, it was expecting a brand new mental habit to feel smooth on the very first attempt. Every one of these 10 tricks feels a little clumsy the first few times, exactly the same way a new physical movement feels clumsy before it becomes natural. The people who actually get the benefit are the ones who keep using the tool through that early clumsy stage until it becomes automatic. Pick just one of these 10 right now, the one that matches the problem bothering you most today, and commit to using only that one for the next 7 days before judging whether it works. Write it down somewhere you will actually see it, your phone lock screen, a sticky note on your desk, anywhere your eyes land before the moment it matters. Go watch that video next, because learning the trick without learning the mistake means you are only getting half the result.